appointed by the sorceress with an avenger, the Knight of the Panther. He rides forth to assail the Normans, with whom Alice's father, Reginald de Beaulieu, fights, and he wreaks havoc amongst them with the aid of his supernatural weaponry, telling them, when accosted, "My face must and shall remain unseen, but in me behold the avenger of the wrongs of a fair maid called Alice de Beaulieu." Finally, he grapples in one-to-one combat with the father, Reginald. But he is in fact overcome by the father. Reginald exclaims exultingly, "Full soon, perfidious enemy, while I tear the glittering casque from my head." "Thy imperious will must be obeyed," said a soft female voice, and the mysterious knight, lifting his beaver, exposed the delicate features of Alice de Beaulieu, the lost sister leagued with the denizens of hell. Reginald is appalled. "Do I indeed behold my daughter Alice? Or doth witchcraft prevail and clothe an agent of darkness in her lovely form?" But unrepentant to the end, Alice tells him, "I am indeed she who was once thy daughter, but I renounce thy blood. I renounce the human race. I am in alliance with the tremendous legion of Craigisel, and spurn the ties that bind timid hearts." All the sorceress of Craigisel has done for Alice is to give her a coat of mail and change her voice from the female tone to manly strength. Alice has all along been her own knight in shining armour. In that Alice is in fact defeated and finally commits suicide by throwing herself on the castle's battlements, it is the Normans rather than the legions of Craigisel who triumph in this text. But its author's sympathies lie very obviously with the rebellious twin. The intrepid Alice is by far the bravest and most charismatic figure in the novel. With the aid of the sorceress, she has overthrown not only family ties, but also all social hierarchies, including gender roles. The attempt to force her into a dependent position has led to her adoption in masculine guise of the anarchic rebel's role, pitted against patriarchy and its systems of gender and rank division. An equally anarchic struggle between a father and daughter is central to Dun & Thomas's School for Witches, first published in 1936. This is the second school. In accordance with the style of Dun & Thomas's early prose, the tone of this short story is surreal and it employs the rhythms of prose poetry. On Cader Peak, there was a school for witches, where the doctor's daughter had 7 country girls. On Cader Peak, half ruined in an enemy weather, the house with the story, keeps kind of punning the house with the story. The house with the story held the 7 girls, the cellar echoing and a cross reversed above the entrance to the inner rooms. Here the doctor, dreaming of illness on the tubercular hill, heard his daughter cry to the power swarming under the west roots. The doctor is disturbed by his daughter's activities, but rendered impotent to stop her by his obsession with sickness. The whole neighbourhood is diseased. On the evening in which the story takes place, 3 tinkers come to the house. The doctor's daughter swoops down on one of them, the scissors man, and takes him abruptly as her lover, which is a posh way of putting it, a polite way of putting it, thus confounding both social and gender proprieties in that she makes all the moves and she does so across class boundaries. Then she, her pupils, and the tinkers enter into a wild celebratory dance. Hand in hand the dancers spun, and likely the doctor's daughter was among them. She drove them to a faster turn of foot. Giddy as weathercocks in 100 changing winds, they were revolving figures in the winds of their dresses. And the doctor, disturbed by all this from his dreams of sickness, appears at the door. It was then that the doctor entered. He is appalled at what he sees, but he had been expecting something like this, so you're in his mind now. There had been nothing for that savage evening, but an end of evil, which is an ambiguous sentence. You could read, nothing for that savage evening, but an end of evil, or nothing for that savage evening, but an end of evil. The grave had yawned, and the black breath risen up. Here danced the metamorphoses of the dusts of Cathmaru. Cathmaru, that is dead cat, is the name of the local village, which is also dead and rotting like Cader Peak, but is now changed, metamorphosized into new dancing figures of life by the rhythms of the witches' frolic. But at first, all this is still too anarchic and upsetting for the doctor. Woe unto Cader, into my nice square house. Square, not round. To my nice square house, he laments as he stands by, grieving. Then he too gets caught up in the swirling rhythm of the dance. One dancing past snatched at the doctor's hand. Another dancing caught him around the waist, and all bewildered by the white flesh of their arms, the doctor danced. He gets into it. A coven, cried the dancing doctor, and bowed in his measures. He's getting into the coven, he's joining the dance, he's joining the rhythm. Daddy has merged with the witch's rhythm, because we can go Silver Cat's going Daddy there. Daddy has merged with the witch's rhythms, and the daughter and her pupils have succeeded in their aims. They had unloosed the spellbound human skeleton, the flesh and heart out of the valley roots. Their magic was done. The liberating energy embodied in the dance corresponds to the rejuvenating life force celebrated in many of Dylan Thomas's best-known poems. This is the force that through the green fuse drives the flower. It's got the same kind of energy as dance. The whirling ring of dancers, with its dark destructive aspects as well as its revitalizing force, is representative of the cycle of nature, in which death and decay nourish living matter in readiness for the next birth, so often celebrated in Dylan Thomas's poetry. Endlessly pushing up daisies from the corpse-fed roots. Death has no dominion in the school for witches. What then, taken together, do these two schools for Welsh witches teach? What's on their curriculum? The primary lesson in both cases is the importance of liberating the self from the patriarchal order, from its confining gender roles and the rigidity of the social systems of private property and inheritance on which it depends. The nice square houses and tidy hierarchies of patriarchy are swept away by these anarchic daughters. Alice de Beaulieu, it's true, does not succeed in her fight against the patriarch in the earlier, more conservative fiction, which ends up in her suicide. But at least she was given the tools with which to aim for that goal in her school at Craigself, and she was taught the heady bliss of liberation and the energizing effects of defying the proprieties of gender roles. In both novels, an inspiring life force, represented by the daughters, refuses repression and declares war on a patriarchy seen as inimical to it. This pattern evokes echoes of the long wars against patriarchal ascendancy fought in prehistoric ages, according to archaeologists. No doubt, such volumes as Maria Gimbuta's The Civilization of the Goddess, Gerda Lerner's The Creation of Patriarchy, and Robert Graves's The White Goddess were on the syllabus in the School for Witches. According to Gimbutas, during the Stone Ages, European communities were matrilineal, that is, children took their mother's name, and matrilocal, that is, families joined the clan of the mother, not the father. And they worshipped the mother goddess in her many aspects. So she says, the primordial deity for our Paleolithic and Neolithic, that is, Old Stone Age and New Stone Age, ancestors, was female, reflecting the sovereignty of motherhood. In fact, there are no images that have been found of a father god throughout the prehistoric record. Paleolithic and Neolithic symbols and images cluster around the self-generating goddess and her basic functions as giver of life, wielder of death, and regeneratrix. This is the goddess from the Gundestrup cauldron, and you can see she's represented in her maternal guise. That's obviously a baby there, which I think with those strangely spindly arms, she's holding it to her breast. The feet seem to be around the breast rather than the nipple, but I think they're supposed to be, he's not supposed to be falling off, I think. He's supposed to be being nourished. Yes. And she's, but in her other hand, she's holding a bird of prey, which is a symbol of death. So she's both giver of life and wielder of death. These Stone Age cultures were, according to the archaeologist, not in fact matriarchal but egalitarian. Gimbutas stresses that the evidence from Stone Age tomb burials indicates that men and women were treated with equal respect. The social order apparently eschewed hierarchies and militarization, but the peace-loving civilizations of the goddess lost power to patriarchal invaders during the 4th millennium BC. Yet, according to Gimbutas, the mother goddess's power was too ancient and deep to be altogether destroyed by succeeding patriarchal religions, including Christianity. The evidence provided by Gerda Lerner, a historian working on ancient Mesopotamian cultures, supports Gimbutas' arguments. Lerner says, the period of the establishment of patriarchy was not one event, but a process developing over a period of nearly 2,500 years, from approximately 3,100 to 600 BC. Yet, metaphysical female power, especially the power to give life, is worshipped by men and women in the form of powerful goddesses long after women are subordinated to men in most aspects of their lives on earth. Linguistic, as well as religious evidence, shows traces of the mother goddess's remains. The language codes embedded within Proto-Indo-European indicate that the culture of those who spoke it must from the first have been patriarchal. This is like, in Welsh you have the word for man is dyn and for woman is dynes. That shows you it's a patriarchal language from the beginning. The woman is derived from the man. The same thing goes in English as well. So if you spoke an Indo-European language, you were already in the patriarchal age. But in some of its early branches, that is, languages which came off from the Indo-European route early on, such as the Celtic language, traces of another order remain. For example, the tribal goddess of the Brigantes, a British Celtic tribe, was Briganti, meaning the exalted one. The Welsh word for king, that is Brenin, derives from Brigantinos, meaning consort of the goddess Briganti, and at first arisen referring specifically to male leaders of the Brigantes. So I think it's the same tradition in Ireland. The leader was thought of as having married the goddess. Then he's called Brenin, king, meaning he is the husband of the goddess. But of course now we think of Brenin as simply meaning king, no kind of mother goddess anywhere there. But you can see the traces of it, the traces of the older tradition in the language. So, Gimbutas argues, Celts absorbed matricentric and matrilineal traditions from the rich substratum of Old Europe. Mythological evidence also supports these arguments that behind patriarchal culture there was a matriarchal culture. The suggestion is that within some of the oldest myth cycles of Indo-European languages, such as the Greek myth cycle and the Celtic myth cycle, the story of the degradation and the loss of power of the old mother goddess civilizations is told. We get these stories about women leaders losing power. So a tale like, for example, that of Heroine in the Book of Taliesin, one of the Welsh myth cycle, is read as representing the passing of the goddess's power. Heroine is the all-knowing, all-powerful goddess figure, leader figure, and she's also strongly maternal. She wants a full life for all of her children, males as well as females. She's not matriarchal, she's egalitarian, but she is the reigning goddess. But according to the myth, one of her sons is born so ugly that his mother feels that she must equip him with some special skills to help him in life. Heroine resolved, this is from Child Guest's translation, Heroine resolved to boil a cauldron of inspiration and science for her son, Abagni, that his deception might be honourable, even though he's so ugly, because of his knowledge of the mysteries of the future state of the world. Of course, she must have had this power herself, if she can make the concoction to which she's going to introduce her son. The cauldron might not cease to boil until 3 blessed drops were obtained of the grace of inspiration, and she put Bouillon Bach to stir the cauldron, and she herself, in planetary hours, gathered every day of all charm-bearing herbs. And one day, as Ceridwen was culling plants and making incantations, it chanced that 3 drops of the charmed liquor flew out of the cauldron and fell upon the finger of Gwion Bach. And by reason of their great heat, he put his finger to his mouth. And that instant, he foresaw everything that was to come, and perceived that his chief care must be to guard against Ceridwen, as he's stolen the special inspiration. So she flees, and she went forth after him, running. And he saw her, and he changed into a hare and fled. But she changed herself into a greyhound and turned him. And he becomes a fish, and she becomes an otter to chase him. He becomes a bird, and she becomes a hawk to get him. Then he becomes a grain of wheat, and she becomes a hen and finds him, and she swallowed him. And as the story says, she bore him 9 months, because he's a seed. He's a grain of wheat, he's a seed. She bore him 9 months, and when she was delivered of him, she could not find it in her heart to kill him by reason of his beauty. She is too susceptible mother. This is her mother bigger business. So, Gwion Bach lives on to become the famed bard, Taliesin, who shows little gratitude to his mother, but refers to Ceridwen as a hag repeatedly in the verses included in his book. Her fall from being the all-knowing, the all-powerful, to being the hag simply because she was too maternal for her own good was apparently a common decline for the mother goddesses. Gimbaltas tells us that the degradation of the goddess in all her forms began during the period of Indo-Europeanization of Old Europe in the 4th and 3rd millennia BC, continued. The goddess of death and regeneration was demonized and degraded into the familiar and highly publicized image of the witch. She came to represent all that was denied and considered evil. No longer was the earth considered our divine mother, from whom we are born and to whom we return in death. Deity was removed into the heavens, and earth became a place of exile. So the powers of the goddess, her knowledge of the properties of plants and planets, all this is in the Ceridwen story, her shape-shifting capacities, and her cauldron cooking, all these became the trappings of the witch. For some, though, the myth of Ceridwen continues to resonate as a source of inspiration. Robert Graves says, Ceridwen, he spells it with double R, Ceridwen abides. I write of her as the white goddess. Poetry began in the matriarchal age, as we just saw. It wasn't actually matriarchal, but it was goddess worshipping. With the breathing in by the poet of the Awen of the cauldron of Ceridwen, and he still venerates his white goddess as the source of poetic inspiration. But to what extent, more generally speaking, did those with access to these mythologies, which included vestiges of the old religion, continue to hold in awe the witch? Again, there's some interesting linguistic evidence.